IVM.
Hi everybody, just wanted to ask everyone for a quick favor. We're running a brand survey right now and would really appreciate it if you could let us know what you think about the advertising on IVM. Go to ivmpodcast.com/survey and do let us know. As part of this, we'll be selecting 10 random participants and sending them some IVM swag, so do fill out those surveys.
All of them had 10 plus years of experience in their respective fields of media. And there I was, just 19-year-old there, and just didn't know what to do, was just taking one day at a time, trying not to make a mess and just trying to learn. Very expensive equipment around, just try learning, just trying to not make a fool out of myself and just be there and just soak in everything. I think my classmates, we were 12 of us from different countries. Every year, 12 students are picked up for that program, MA Filmmaking program. And, I think it was wonderful. I specialized in producing. And I remember my tutor telling me, I chose direction. But he put me in producing, and I asked my tutor, I want to direction, you put me in producing. It's like, you will thank me later, Radhika. I think you're well fitted for this role. And I did thank him much later when I met him a couple of years.
Hello and welcome to the Filter Koffee Podcast. The Indian streaming space is going through a revolution in terms of content in regional languages, especially South Indian languages. My guest today, Radhika Lavu, is the producer of two of the biggest shows in Telugu in recent times. One is Gods of Dharmapuri, a show on Z5, which is a crime drama with the backdrop of the mining mafia of the 70s. And Unheard, a Hotstar show which is a conversational drama set in pre-independence Andhra, which looks at the freedom struggle from a common man's perspective. Radhika is also an independent filmmaker who's been a part of hundreds of documentaries and has traveled across villages in Andhra Pradesh, showing it to people on makeshift screens. I want to talk to Radhika about the independent film ecosystem and the struggles of it in India, and also about the emergence of regional language content on streaming platforms. Stay with us. We'll be right back on the Filter Koffee Podcast.
$100. That's all it takes to begin your journey with Bitcoin and Ethereum. No, really. With CoinSwitch, you can start investing in over 100 cryptocurrencies with just 100 rupees. On top of that, there are zero charges for deposits and withdrawals, so you can trade, buy, sell, however and whenever you want. All of this, plus their extremely intuitive interface, makes CoinSwitch the perfect app for beginners in the crypto space. But don't take my word for it. Just download CoinSwitch for free and try it out for yourself. If you'd like more information on cryptocurrencies, tune into a show about crypto with me, Rohan Joshi, my new adventure on IVM Podcasts. CoinSwitch, kuch to badlega.
Welcome to the Filter Koffee Podcast, Radhika. Where are you talking to us from?
Hyderabad. Thank you so much.
Excellent. It's one of my most favorite cities. And also, I think, a reasonably misunderstood city. I think people don't really know in the other parts of the country how awesome that place is. Did you grow up in Hyderabad?
No, I grew up in Delhi. I've done my bachelor's in Hyderabad, and I've done my master's in London, and I've come back to Hyderabad because I think the city was calling. It's quite a calling for me from the city, and it's very familiar for me. This city is very neutral and very good to have a base. And the industry was growing here also, and my mother tongue is Telugu. So hence I started my career here. I got a job, so I think it was a natural progression from there.
Wonderful. What did you walk us through your early years growing up? And then later on, we can talk about cinema and how you got fascinated with that.
So my formative years was from Delhi. And all throughout my school life, I've always been fascinated with films and how films were made. And I wanted to keep watching films, either it's on television or theaters, however it was. So being in Delhi, our friends, we got exposed to music, films across not just India, but Western films, Hollywood films, other language films. The faint memory of being in watching films in other languages in Delhi during that time. In Pragati Maidan, there was a theatre with the name Shakuntalam. So I remember watching it there.
Well, what's your earliest cinema memory in Delhi?
Okay. I remember watching Sound of Music when I was in 6th standard in Shakuntalam. So I fell in love with the music, Sound of Music, the film. I remember in Hindi, I think that was remade. I don't remember the name of the Hindi film.
Right.
But I watched the Sound of Music after the Hindi one. And, even then, I think that old country space and, how musical it was and how engrossing, engaging it was. I think I was quite taken away by films in that space. And yes, but I think I was just, because, Delhi studies and co-curricular activities and all of that, I just waited for my time. Let me finish with my 12th standard. I'll start applying for colleges and so on and so forth. And, but being in Delhi, I think we were quite exposed to drama a lot. I used to stay in an apartment space in East Delhi. So many children. There were so many children. And the apartment was predominantly Bengalis. So during Durga Puja, we used to have these pandals and children were encouraged to, participate in theatre, drama, have plays. So that was my small stint of acting during that time. But I loved organizing for that, directing that, acting in it. And I think that's when it started. 7th standard, I think 7th or 8th standard. That's where the bug bit me. That's where it started. And then I think, as a teenager, just keep watching films, consuming, just reading up as much as the internet wasn't so easily available during then. It was still, the web wasn't so large and so vast then. So,
but talk to us a little bit about the bug itself, right? When and I'm asking you this because, growing up for me, I think most of my life I've been fascinated with cinema. A good part of it, I've been trying to make cinema. And when I look back and see, okay, what is the one point when I really wanted to be on this side of cinema, which is not the watching it, but the making it. Then I think my that moment for me was when I walked out of the theater after watching The Last Emperor with my dad. And it was a 70mm theater. And if you remember the film, the Bertolucci film.
Yes.
I think the film opens with a train pulling into the station. And it was just extraordinary, right? And I couldn't get it out of my head for months after that. So I always remember that moment of just walking out into the crowd from the theater. So for you, Sound of Music, something like that?
It was, but because the theater didn't have a great sound system, so I didn't get that feel, but I still loved it. As I told you, because I had watched the Hindi one before that it released. And when I watched Sound of Music, I saw how the story is similar, but the representation, how different they were making it. It's that visualization and making that made all of it. But it took me years for me to understand what's the difference. How do we make it? The colors fascinated me. The colors, drew me in. The music drew me in. But during that time, I think I was exposed to a lot of Yash Chopra's films. Chandni, Dil To Pagal Hai, Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge. All these films, I remember watching in some theatre, I don't remember which theatre, Chanakya, I think, if I'm not wrong, in Delhi. Chanakya, or there was a theatre in CP, now Rajiv Chowk. I remember watching and, I didn't resonate with that story, but I still loved watching it in 70mm, lovely music and, the whole feel, the romantic stories and all of that. I don't have any qualms in telling, the world that even those films are really nice. I love Chandni when I watched it. Absolutely. Lamhe, Chandni. Those films were like during my school years, those were the films. I think two and a half hours.
I love the DDLJ experience. And to me, it was as overwhelming as a Truffaut or any other great cinema I've seen. I'm not comparing these films, but like it all made a huge impact when you're growing up, right?
True.
So that's wonderful. And then how did life bring you to Hyderabad?
I was applying for colleges, and St. Francis College had a mass communication course in bachelor's, and and also Hyderabad being the another film industry space, I thought it would be nice to study and try working in the space around here, because the film industries, what you say during that time, were Mumbai, Chennai, or Hyderabad. See, the Hindi, Tamil, or Telugu, majorly, predominantly, like the bigger ones and all of that. So Telugu being a mother tongue of mine, I could understand the language and all of that. So it just, natural way of getting into a college here, study. So I think Hyderabad was a little different back then, more than a decade back. It's quite a different place right now, but we still had theaters here. Just a stone throw away, we had theaters. We used to just bunk classes. I hope none of my lecturers are watching this, but later we used to bunk classes and go to watch movies. And there were theaters with the name Anand Theatre nearby. It's a beautiful single screen. They were not multiplexes, the single screen. I miss that experience of single screen theaters. I'm not saying we don't get that in multiplexes, Dolby, DTS, they're improving the video quality and the sound quality, but there's some, authenticity of single screen, those theaters that I miss. I genuinely miss that. So some of the beautiful theaters in Hyderabad, they're changing into multiplexes. I hope few are retained, so that we still have that. So Hyderabad happened. I worked here as an intern with a few television channels and news channels, gained some experiences. As a mass communication student, we were supposed to do any mass communication student, I think they have to do internships and all of that. So I just tried my hand in everything: journalism, video journalism, news channels, writing for a television show, co-writing for a television show, just dabbled as much as I can during that time. But I wanted to learn. They're all just fillers in news channels, right? So entertainment. I was put in entertainment majorly. So I think it was, they just thought that it'll be really nice. I think she cooks up a lot of stories and everything. So it'll be good. She's in the entertainment segment. But I was aching to learn how it is made, because there was such rush in me to learn it. I'd like, either put me in a film set, I want to learn, or I want to go to a film school. It has to be either, but somebody has to teach me, somebody has to at least show me, because 17 years old, you want somebody to at least show you a path, show you a way. I applied at Goldsmiths, and at that time when I was applying, I had a couple of other colleges also in New York, LA, and in London. I liked the vibe of London. I liked the art scenario in London and how they treat film as an art, not entirely a commercial entity and in that space. So I agreed, and I think not me, I think they accepted my application. I was the youngest in the class. All of them had 10 plus years of experience in their respective fields of media. And there I was, just 19-year-old there, and just didn't know what to do, was just taking one day at a time, trying not to make a mess and just trying to learn. Very expensive equipment around, just try learning, just trying to not make a fool out of myself and just be there and just soak in everything. I think my classmates, we were 12 of us from different countries. Every year, 12 students are picked up for that program, MA filmmaking program.
Right.
And, I think it was wonderful. It was
what did you study? I mean, it's of course one of the most prestigious places to learn.
Yes.
Film. What did you specialize on in any aspect of film?
Producing. I specialized in producing, and I remember my tutor telling me I chose direction, but he put me in producing, and I asked my tutor, I wanted direction, you put me in producing. It's like, you will thank me later, Radhika. I think you're well fitted for this role. And I did thank him much later when I met him a couple of years later from the course time. So yes, so It was wonderful. I was visiting my family in Hyderabad for after the course was over. I was planning to go back to London and work with a production house, pick up a job, try extending my stay in London and work and all of that. But I was in Hyderabad for a holiday. I was offered a job here to make documentaries. I think I jumped with that opportunity. I took it up, and when 4.5 years, it just went by. It just absolutely went by. It was an insane working experience. My Telugu was very bad. Mother tongue is Telugu, but I can't speak fluently. I can, but you ask me to, because I think in English, like everyone, I think in English. So, Telugu was a little foreign for me.
Right.
And especially making documentaries in Telugu, you have to know Telugu, really well.
And there are many different Telugu.
Yes. And these documentaries were for the rural populace on top of that. So, I have to make sure that when I'm producing, I need to know the content right. So I taught myself Telugu. I taught the traditional ways of media and advertising for the documentaries with the rural folk. So traveled across the state of Andhra Pradesh then and worked with the government and a private company who had collaborated for these documentaries.
What kind of documentaries were there?
These were educational. So for prenatal, postnatal care, chronic illnesses, we were trying to teach the importance of washing, as simple as washing your hands before eating. And if they don't have soap, what are the substitutes for washing your hand and keeping your hand clean? And we were taking help of ASHA workers. These were these workers in these villages who used to, aid us in putting across to these people. See, electricity was a problem. I think in the villages, electricity is a major problem. So how do I show these documentaries? So we started going around these villages with screens and projectors, battery-based projectors, or, put it into the battery of the car and start showing these documentaries and ask people to gather during the panchayat time. And all we've done, there's so much. I think I can go on and tell you how, we made sure those documentaries were seen. Because for me, at that time, I'm like, I'm producing documentaries, but who's watching these? Who are going to be watching these? They don't have electricity. How do we make them watch? So we started devising plans. How do we get people together? In Telugu, it's called Dappu. Dappu is that Dappli. So there's this man who goes around the village, playing Dappli and telling people to gather. 5 o'clock,
like the percussion thing that he...
Yes. They go around. So we hired that person saying, make people gather during this time. And we showed those films. Yeah, we did all sorts of, I think, ways to attract people and watch these documentaries. Post that, I think I started freelancing. I started understanding what's next after documentaries. How do I progress? What do I learn next? Then a couple of years later is when I'd started my production house. My journey started. It took me a year and a half to get my first ad. It was a year and a half, 2 years, I think, to get my first ad. I wasn't even bothered about the budget. Absolutely nothing about the budget. You know what? Somebody trusted me to produce this and give them this. So let's just do it. No profit, no loss. Just do it and give it. That's when it had started. I realized that networking, keep talking to like-minded people, keep going out and speaking with people to try understand what's happening around. It took me another couple of years to at least find the people, a group of people who have a similar thought, and we can work together. So that's how it had started. One thing led to another, and good ads started coming. Good brands have started coming my way. Then web series happened. I traveled a lot to Mumbai, met the broadcasting OTT companies, and I used to give out 10 to 20 stories, asking them to pick it up. Yeah, right. So
as you explain this, I'm thinking that I've always associated Hyderabad with independent cinema a lot, right? I don't know. Probably it's because when we were young, a gentleman called Nagesh Kukunur sort of made this film called Hyderabad Blues on VHS.
Yes.
And that was if you're an independent filmmaker, that's the story, right? Like that was the breakout moment, right?
Yes.
Someone made this in a throwaway budget with friends and family and everything else on VHS of all things, right? And then he got theater screenings, and we all watched that film in Chennai and all of that, right? So to me, I always associate, of course, later on I'll go on to love many different filmmakers from that part of the world, including Shekhar and Kamula and many others. But I always associate Hyderabad with that spirit, right, of independent cinema. Let's try this. Let's push the envelope here, etc. Right? And I think you had this long journey where you started off with documentary films, screening them in villages, and then slowly moving on to producing more. And I find that very unique, right? Because typically, when you study film, especially, you want to quickly break in, get that first big project. I've seen very few people play the waiting game. So you want to really assist someone or get into a big production house, etc., make a mark, right? So, and then you keep the fire burning, right? But since you've taken this journey, my question to you is, we all know of the independent film scene in India. You, of course, been through that, right? What is your take on it? How unstructured, how difficult is it? But at the same time, it's also the same system that brought someone out of you. You were eventually able to break out of it. So tell us a little bit more about that.
I think to start with, Hyderabad Blues still is one of my favorites. I remember watching it on VHS, and I remember briefly chatting with Nagesh Kukunur one day and telling him that how that film, I think, catapulted my, ambition. And I think it just grew exponentially once I watched that film. And I've always been a fan of his, narrative style and the genres and everything that he picks up. I think one of the other films I remember watching of his was Door.
Yeah.
A beautiful film. Such a beautiful film. Coming back.
Which is also a remake of a fantastic Malayalam film. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
With Meera Jasmine in it. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Oh, yes. I remember watching it. So I think from that time till today, it's been quite a shift with the confidence that independent filmmakers, have right now. Back then, when Mr. Nagesh Kukunur, or before him also, when they were independently trying to not have collaborators in the market and independently work towards films get finance it yourself, independently finance it, or find financiers to back the film, and who will believe in your vision and will be patient enough to travel with you, and all of that were quite few. I think the world, everything, the technology, or how the aspect of how a film is made, the interest level, everything has increased, right? The theaters have gone up, and so many movies are being made, so many films are being made. Immense amount of knowledge is being shared among people. I think even now, if I ask a 16-year-old how a film is made, he's going to give me all crafts.
Yeah.
He's going to give me that bookish knowledge about how a film is made. So the knowledge has risen. General audiences, also general people, general population also knows how films are made these days. So from the world as such coming together, and the space between people has, I'm talking about in general, worldly space, and also the knowledge that people have acquired these years, and how we're able to share the knowledge. The independent cinema, I think, it's just becoming more stronger. If you ask me, if I can be confident enough without any person backing me, or any person apart from my family who supported me through and throughout completely, who's been patient with me, family, friends, everyone around me, if I can do it, I think there's a space and there's time. This is the time for people to be independent, to be very, very brave with the stories, and you will just be like persistent. People feed off your confidence. People feed off on your, I believe in that. I believe in that extremely, that you are confident, your resolve is so strong, it will happen. Maybe it's going to take time, but it will eventually happen.
Let me ask you a more specific question, right?
Yes. Yes.
How long did you spend making documentaries and pitching to different OTT platforms before you broke in?
3 years before I got that break with the OTT.
So in these 3 years, I'm sorry for a very, very direct question, and you can choose to not answer it. At what point did you actually make money from this?
Recently, Karthik. Just recently. I'm being very honest, very recently. As I said, when I appreciate, when I indebted to my family is that, they didn't understand this. They didn't understand why I'm being so impractical.
Right.
So, but they've just let me be. I had to tell myself that the day will come wherein I will see, when as a producer, it's a very different thought that we are only associated with the money. As in, you will never see a producer who's a millionaire, because I'll tell you, when you earn something, it's not just for your upkeep, but it's also going to go back to the films you're going to keep making, right? I don't know about all the other predecessors of mine, but this is what my thought process is. So if there is something that you've made, you keep some. Major part goes off into making your future films so that you are not fallen into the old loop.
Right. In fact, the phrase, or rather the title producer itself is very different in India compared to the world, isn't it? Like, and correct me if I'm wrong, in the US or in Europe, mostly a producer is someone who literally just he produces the film, right? Make sure he or she make sure it happens, right? Which means manage all the stakeholders, get things done, remove roadblocks, etc. But in India, for some strange reason, it seems to have a very specific financial sort of meaning in it, right? Like a producer is a guy who finances a film, which is not what it is globally, isn't it?
Absolutely. Here in India, we term producers as a glorified production managers, which again, each and every country and a film market has its own definitions of head of the department. But because I've studied producing, and for me, it is about being part from 0 to 100. Make sure that I'm there throughout, hustle, clear the roadblocks, make sure that the story that we've picked up in the point 0 is something that we see through to point 100 with dignity, with the time, with the team coming together on the same, in tandem with each other is what my job is. And with each team, the work is maneuvered and, just tweaked here and there. But I definitely, I work like that. I work finance. Yes, they're a big part of it. I have to sit down. Without the finance, the film can't stand on itself. So finance is a big part, but that's not the only part. There's far more bigger things to work on. So
you've been part of 2 big productions recently. One, of course, is Gods of Dharmapuri, and then Unheard, right? From the context of these projects, could you talk to us about how this 0 to 100 sort of happens? What is the process? Like, where do you start, and how does all of these things come together? How do you bring in the other stakeholders in it?
I'll start with God. That was the first one which came to me, and for me, it was like, do or die. Just do this. Just, being given an opportunity and try my best to just do it.
When you said came to me, what do you mean?
So there was, the story came to me. The story came to me. And when Z5 liked the story and all of that, and this whole thing came together, that's what I meant, when the whole thing came together. At that time, those budgets were pretty high for me also to work, not just the budgets, but the expanse of it, what the OTT was expecting out of the project and from the producer and the production house. So this story came to me, a very intense crime drama of a region in, Rayalaseema, that kind of space. And they had pitched it to Z5. These writers had pitched it to Z5. And Z5 wanted these writers to be backed by a producer. And because they work in a corporate fashion, they wanted them to be backed by a producer and a production house who can back them up and who have the capacity and the capabilities to execute this. And because I've had so many meetings with Z5, I think I was on top of the head. And that's what I'm trying to say, that networking, it will come to, your rescue. You just have to be there and talk. And that helped me. So Z5 people had suggested, the content people had suggested, saying that, we remember meeting Radhika. I think you should meet her and see if she likes it and all of that. Then you can take it further. So the writers came to me and I liked it, but I wanted a few changes to that, saying that, if this is as it is you produce it, I'm not interested. There has to be some changes to that so that we try making something unique, making something, because that was an old wine. So how do I put an old wine in a new bottle? How do I present it? Is what I was.
And just for the uninitiated, this is the mining mafia story set in the 70s. Sort of.
Yes. That's the one. Yeah. Yes. So I called Z5 and I said, it's nice, but I would like a little bit of independency and, some amount of freedom to tweak the story and, make it our own and my own in that manner. So they said, fair enough. I think if you're willing to take this up, I think let's do it. Then the journey had started. And then I'm like, all right, this is my moment. I need to make this happen. I need to do this with dignity, with, make this completely, it's like my showreel right now. Somebody has trusted me. Somebody has called me up and I took it very seriously. And I'm like, all right, great. So then the journey had started. We started writing the first draft. At that time, I think I didn't have anybody that I could call and ask, how was the series written? Because series was complex. It's still complex. It was even more complex back then. This was 2018. 2019 it released, 2018, early 2018. 2017 end or 2000 early 18. We didn't have so many of web series, a lot of web series that were there on the OTTs back then. Very few OTTs were there also. So it was a little dark for us to, understand how do we write. So a lot of drafts had been written. I wasn't too happy with the drafts. I'm like, something has to wake me up. This is not it. I met Anish Kuruvalla, the director of the series. He was acting in an ad of mine. He's an actor himself, he's an actor, writer, director. Somehow I aligned with him. The thought process aligned with him. And, by that time I told him, this is what I'm doing, Anish. Would you like to work on it? He liked the story. He's like, same, like how I'd asked Z5, he asked me, do I have the freedom to write it the way that because if I'm going to own this, I'm going to need some freedom there. I said, absolutely. Absolutely. The freedom will be there until unless we have a cap on things. What we had promised the client, we need to deliver that. Under that cap of promise, we can do everything. We just can't change the story, 360 degrees, because that's not how corporates work also. And because you promise something, right? So yes, the journey had started then with a good team, the cinematographer, the costume designer, actors, everyone. I think one after the other, the spaces started filling in. And it just became such a big, huge, lovely team that it was so wonderful to have all of them with the same passion, day in, day out, inclusive of associate directors, my whole production team, everyone put together. We worked on it for a year, and we delivered, and it was released in October 2019. So that's when it released.
It's interesting. I was recently speaking to a filmmaker from the US, and we were talking about Walter Murch, and there is this very my favorite line from Walter Murch, which is firstly, it's a miracle that any film gets made, and he also spoke about how making a film is like playing reverse 20 questions. So
yes.
So everyone sort of changes the answer to the 20 question thing by what the previous person has done. So you make a change, you give it to the director makes a change, and so on. It goes until the final product sort of has everyone's brush stroke on it in some form, isn't it?
Yes.
It's wonderful, and I think yours is one of those success stories which is very inspiring, right? Like you of course you broke through with this, and then just in September You've launched your other series called Unheard, which
Yes,
is on Hotstar.
That's another journey altogether.
Was it different from this
one? It was. I think all of us were in the pandemic, sitting at home. There was an immense pressure after The God released, and it garnered a lot of attention from the audiences and a lot of appreciation from co-workers, other OTTs. And I received a lot of phone calls asking me to produce similar to God. And I told myself that I need to challenge. I need to be challenged. Something needs to be more challenging. I didn't want to fall into the trap of being monotonous with this genre which worked, right, or the narrative which worked. So I had to just politely decline those offers. I was taking a little time. I was a little tired also. I think, you get mentally tired. You're on something for, months and months together. I just wanted to take a little break and think through, and then, get into my next story, produce my next one. And pandemic happened. Everyone were just home. I started working on stories again because, weaving stories is like my cocoon. It's like my safe zone. Working on characters, because I work with characters first and then the story. So I need to have a clarity. Even when my writers write something, I request them to give me a clarity on what the character is. How does that character look? What's the body language of the character? Is he tall, short, fat, thin? How is he? What's his skin? Just give me, it's always good to understand what these characters are. And then when you read a story, you automatically know how that character is being placed in that story. So that's the fashion I work with. So I think I just was in my safe zone, sitting at home, trying to, just weave stories there. Then came a story. Aditya, the writer-director of Unheard, was someone who's been traveling with us for some time. He was the co-screenplay writer for God also. And he came up to me one day on a phone call, and we weren't meeting. It was a phone call. He said, Radhika, I have a lovely story. Would you like to listen to it? I said, always, tell away. So he told me just a line, Karthik, just a line, saying that I know that you've been a big fan of conversations. I think you will love it. So this is a conversational drama set in pre-independence era in Hyderabad. I'm like, wow, I'm sold. What is this about? What is this about? I said, okay, give me 15 days. I'm going to get back to you with the synopsis and what these conversations are going to be. So within 15 days, and he's very prompt with his timeline also, within 15 days, he sends me a Word document about these 6 to 7 conversations and what's happening between 2 people, 3 people. What are these conversations? Okay, you know what? This is beautiful. This is nice. But how do we make it more easily understand? It shouldn't sound and look like a documentary, and you need to have some commercial element to it. How are you going to do it? Then our journey had started from there on. Then I got really excited and I said, let's not pitch it to an OTT. Let's try making this. I would like to, because with an OTT, it takes time. Karthik, it's not because it's difficult to get through. Right. But it takes time. The process takes time and everything. So, but Aditya and I and the team were so driven and so impatient that we have to make this. We have to go, on this and make this. So just before the world started getting into normalcy in September 2020 is when we went forward and made this. And so, and we just started calling people, and we did 2 to 3 months of pre-production before that. And again, cinematographer, editors, costume designers, the whole team, actors, as and when we were narrating this to each one of them, their excitement, their, when wide-eyed responses just gave us more confidence, just excited us even more. So
you call this, sorry, I'm interrupting your flow, but you call this film conversational drama, right? What do you mean by that?
In literal sense, verbose. No jokes apart. See, what happens is, I think for the longest of time, I was getting this feeling that we stopped talking to each other face to face, thanks to the phones or phone calls, messages, WhatsApp, the other apps that are, coming out day in, day out. I think the essence of conversations were lost, as in nobody's sitting across the table. Even if you go out, Karthik, what do you see when two people are sitting with each other? What do? 90% of the time, they're on their phones. They're not talking to each other. They're not talking with each other. So, and we're talking about an era when pre-independence era, no phones, nothing. I think it was kind of a grapevine that worked. You tell, it's about people talking to one person and the information is being passed on to people.
It reminded me when I read it, and then of course I also saw parts of it. It reminded me when I just saw conversational drama, and I was immediately taken to like Linklaters Before Sunrise, sort of a film where the conversation is the frame, isn't it?
Yes.
Is that how you mean it?
Yes, absolutely, and challenging. Coffee and cigarettes. When you talk about the narrative style, but the background and the dialogues and everything is, naturally it's very different because the whole universe is very different. So I think it was in the film school when I watched Jim Baruch's Coffee and Cigarettes during that time. And I remember during that time that, how is that this man is able to make me sit throughout lengthy, verbose conversations with, pauses, with gaps, but he still, is able to make me sit and watch it. So, so it was kind of an experiment for me also and the team. And I would say it's just a beginning. I'd like to keep experimenting with content, with different genres, the narrative styles, stories. And so Unheard is just the first attempt right now. I'm going to go back to my usual other series now. Yeah.
The other thing that really interested me about Unheard is also, recently I was speaking to a very good friend of mine. Unfortunately, he's from the north of India. And I say unfortunate because his view of the rest of India is very limited. And he was asking me over a drink, Karthik, why is that there are no freedom fighters from the south? And I don't know if I should laugh or cry. But I think the point is that the freedom struggle is always being told from a, above Narmada sort of a perspective, right? Like most people don't know who, say, for example, Subramania Bharati is, or Veerapande Kattabomman is, or others.
Pottu Sri Ramalu
is, and many more from Kerala. So, and these stories have not been really told at a national scale, and you'll have to dig up a really old Amachitra Katha to be able to understand these, isn't it?
Yes.
So I found the premise interesting. Right? Period piece set, which is talking about the freedom struggle from a Hyderabad's point of view.
Common man's perspective. That was another that was quite intriguing for me, that a common man's perspective from history, from Amar Chitrakathas, you know about the leaders, people who have led, people who were there in the front. So what is a common man? What is he going through? One of the conversations wherein we have actors Priyadarshi and Baladitya. Priyadarshi is about Bhagat Singh's follower. He's in the jail. So, he's been asked by this doctor who comes to check on him before he's been hung the next day. Saying that, what are you following? Bhagat Singh at least has a name. What are you leaving? He asked that question, that he asks like a common man, what are you going to get? Nobody's going to even remember you. You're dying tomorrow morning. Bhagat Singh's name is throughout. Is your name there? So he asked these questions. So when you talk about common man, the smallest of things are being highlighted there. A common man's perspectives are highlighted.
Right.
Yeah.
Another thing that I wanted to ask you is, and I go back to your independent days. In fact, I often wondered why they call it independent cinema, because that's the most dependent a filmmaker is, really, isn't it? On everything, from friends, from anybody who will give any money to make the film. Jokes aside, this journey is difficult for anybody, but especially as a woman, did you have unique challenges being an independent filmmaker?
No, not really, Karthik, because
that's great to know.
I think I've been fortunate. Doesn't mean that others are as fortunate as me. I know a lot of women filmmakers who've had a very tough journey. I think I'm just, as I said, comparatively fortunate to not have had major roadblocks or major problems with my journey with being a woman in this industry. Like every industry, being a woman, I think it just takes a little more time. It took me a little more time than maybe, a man would have taken, I guess. I don't know. In hindsight, I'm just trying to understand this in hindsight. But I never saw it that way. Karthik, I tell you, I think I was like the horse with blinders. I don't remember, I have my coworkers, I have my colleagues, I have my friends who look back and say, I think, you're completely there. You've always been sticking to your guns. You always wanted to do this. So yeah, I think I was horse with blinders. I never saw anything around. I'm sure they would have been, but cognitively I don't even remember that.
Which is great, actually. Yeah.
It might have happened. I'm being very honest. I'm being very candid and honest when I'm telling you this. It might have happened, but I think I was so into my zone, I never paid attention to that.
I think it's also a testament to, with a slightly more corporatized OTT ecosystem, these glass ceilings are now much thinner than they used to be in cinema, isn't it? So I guess I'm very happy that you didn't find it particularly challenging from that aspect. Radhika, we usually end the episode asking, our guest what he or she is watching, reading, listening to. In your case, I'm gonna tweak it a little bit because you spoke so romantically about single screen theaters, right? And by the way, I live very close to one of the last surviving single screen theaters in Delhi, which is Priya.
Really?
Which is ironically, the Priya is the P in PVR, which is
Priya Village Roadshow.
And the first theater they acquired, they just left it as a single screen, and everything else became a multiplex. Right? I always found that ironic. But which are some of the films that you've seen over the years, which you've seen recently, maybe an OTT show, that you'd love to sit back in a single screen and watch? Give us a top 3, top 5.
The one that I remember watching initially, as I said, I think Lamhe was one. And
a film that I would love to watch in a single screen theater. I don't know why it just came to me. Probably because you said Hyderabad. Is Shekhar Kamala's Godavari. Because I feel it's like a very single screenish, laid back sort of an experience. Right? Of course, I love Telugu as a language. I think it's the sweetest language among all Indian languages.
Pitamagan.
Pitamagan.
Suddenly, I don't know why I said Pitamagan. I absolutely loved, that film,
so
Pitamagan.
Very powerful film there. Yeah.
Yes. That's what I was trying to tell you, that Godavari was very nice while watching, showing that complete water and, the whole life near that, and that, the pilgrimage spaces, and it was a beautiful. Do you understand Telugu? You
I do. My brother-in-law is, and a lot of my very close friends speak Telugu.
Okay, nice.
Everybody has their own favorites of Sotachitre, and for me, it has always been Mahanagar. Where I just like the whole office working woman sort of a vibe. Something about that was just very iconic. Very original as far as visuals are concerned, right? So, anyway,
I remember Shyam Benegal's movie. I think I remember what
Which
was
one?
that? Well, there are a lot of ones.
Nishant, Mandi.
Mandi was initially, I think I watched in not theaters, but not Mandi. I don't know. I think there were so many movies. I'm trying to put those movies in single screen and say, okay, this is the film I like to watch in single screen.
For a while, his film Suraj Ka Satwan Gora used to be a very big favorite of mine.
Yeah.
Shyam Benegal's. And it had a very Rashomon-ish sort of
Rashomon-ish kind of,
Like there's one scene in a shop, I think, which comes 2-3 times from different perspectives in that film.
Right.
But switching to OTT, where of course you have planted your flag. What are some of the things you're watching these days? What are your recommendations?
On OTT, I've recently watched Jai Bhim, Surya's Jai Bhim. That's something that.
You're clearly a Surya fan, Pitamagan and then Jai Bhim.
Yeah, I guess. That actually, No, I like him. Karthi. I think in general, South actors, they're quite a few of them that I like the body of work, but I have to pick and choose out of them also the work that they've done. But Jebim was very good. I think it was made earnestly without any frills. I'm not discussing the story as such. I'm just talking about how the film was presented and, there, as I said, with no frills. Usually a film, courtroom dramas, when you say that, not many Indian films are true to the reality. I come from a legal background, so I get this from my family a lot, saying that, your films don't show the courtroom dramas or, what happens in the courts in the original format and all of that. So I think my family gave a kind of an approval. Oh, this is absolutely, the Madras High Court is like that. That's how our proceedings carry on. So no frills in that part, even with the character, no frills. There was no formula being followed with a romantic angle, some other angles to package it. The formula usually commercial films follow.
I love Jebim because I think it's... I have my reservations with the film, but I think sometimes the narrative is way more important than the craft.
Absolutely.
And there are exceptions, that you make.
Absolutely. Yes.
And what I loved about it is you might like the film, find it like my dad found it too much to take. And all of that. But I think the message was uniform. And you watch that film, whichever fashion, but you walk away with, the same thud on your head, right?
Yes.
So that I loved.
Going back to old books, Anne Frank's books and, old literature books these days. So, Emily Bronte, just going back to literary somehow.
Oh, wow.
So those are the books that I'm going back. But
now that you mention it, I'm taken back to school when, I don't know how it was where you grew up, but we used to have this subject called non-detailed. And we'll be reading Thomas Hardy and Emily Bronte in that. I don't know who came up with the name non-detailed.
So, yes. And I think Dune was one I've recently watched in theatre. So that was something I would recommend because I think it's quite... the visuals are so beautiful and the universe that they're trying to create is so beautiful. It just draws you in and it just, I can't wait for the second one. And it was as good as the book that we've read. And I remember reading it as a child and suddenly I saw it on a film. I'm like, all right, I know what's going to come up. So I'm even more excited right now for that. So yes. Yeah.
Look forward to that. Yeah. Great. Radhika, absolute pleasure speaking with you and wishing you continued success in cinema and look forward to watching your next show, either on the big screen or on the small one.
Thank you so much, Karthik. And I will surely listen to more podcasts. I will make it a point to listen to
please do. We're growing the entire market one guest at a time. So
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right.
Yes.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.
If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcasts.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to reach out to me, I am _Karthik. That's Karthik with an H on Twitter. And Filter_Koffee. That's coffee with a K on Instagram.
Hey, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Agla Station Adulthood, Ritasha and Ayushi are in conversation with journalist Pallavi Iyer. They talk about her having lived in so many different cities, adulting through it all, and what motherhood means to her and how young folk can lead better lives and support the nation's progress. On Smarter with Sid, Siddharth asks if energy management is just a better way of time management. Tune in to find out if this is practical and possible. On Khel Niti, Rajiv Mishra, Ayaz Memon and Sabah Karim talk about Team India's elimination from the T20 World Cup, Pakistan's new team and New Zealand stepping into the semi-finals. On Smile India, Shifa discusses a Kolkata-based NGO that's trying to help single-screen cinema survive. And on Hansvani, hear the story Mere Liye Ek Minute and find out why a depressed man mourns his own death by observing silence for a whole minute. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And do follow us on YouTube. We have a number of different channels. You can find them on ivmpodcast.com/YouTube, where you'll be able to take a look at all of the channels we have. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week: Cred, Bank of Baroda, Quarter, CoinSwitch, Kuber, Slay Coffee, Intel, and Oxfam India. Thank you so much. You make this possible.
Namaste, this is Cyrus Brocha. I am part of the government cancel culture program to remove rubbish off all the different streams available. So what we have is all the collected rubbish we put together on our show. It's called Cyrus Says. It's on IVM Podcast. You have to watch it and listen to it. It's on our app. It's on our website. It's on the YouTube channel. It's on Facebook. There are many different ways. Don't bother me and ask me how. You have to find out. We talk to different personalities. Many of them are known. Some are just people we meet downstairs and invite them up for chai. But the point is, it's fun and it's very therapeutic. So please join in and listen to Cyrus Says.